King Alaric's roar echoed through the stone walls of the royal chamber, making even the battle-hardened guards flinch. Treason. You dare to conspire against me, Lyra, my own chosen queen? His amber eyes blazed as he circled her, the council members watching in stunned silence. Lyra stood tall, despite the trembling in her legs. Her hand instinctively moved to her abdomen, protecting the life growing within. I have committed no treason, my king. These are lies spread by those who wish to see us divided. Lord Darius stepped forward, his thin lips curled into what might have been mistaken for concern. Your Majesty, the evidence is irrefutable. The royal seal on these letters, arrangements with the southern territories, plans for your assassination. Letters I never wrote, Lyra countered, her voice steady despite her racing heart. My Kenyala Rick, look at me. We have been together for 3 cycles of the moon. You know my heart. The king's expression hardened as he unrolled a parchment, bearing a seal identical to Lyra's family crest. Then explain this. Your signature, your seal, your betrayal laid bare for all to see. The council chamber fell silent. Elder Moira, who had served 3 generations of royalty, studied Lyra's face. The child she carries is yours, your Majesty. Would she risk everything? Silence? Alaric slammed his fist against the ancient oak table. The child could be anyone's. Perhaps part of her plan. Lyra's face drained of color. You cannot believe that. What I believe, Alaric said, his voice dangerously quiet, is that I welcomed you into my kingdom, into my heart, and you plotted my downfall? Your Majesty, Lord Darius interjected smoothly. The law is clear on the punishment for treason. Lyra's eyes never left Alaric's face, searching for any flicker of the man who had held her just that morning, who had placed his hand on her belly and whispered promises of their future. But his eyes were cold now, a stranger's eyes. Alaric, please, she whispered. Someone has deceived you. For a moment, Jessamamadow crossed his face. Then Lord Darius leaned close, murmuring something in the king's ear, and the doubt vanished. Take her to the holding cells, Alaric commanded. The council will convene at dawn to determine her sentence. As the guards approached, Lyra stood, straight-backed and proud. Remember this moment, Alaric, she said, her voice carrying across the chamber, when you discover the truth, and you will remember that you chose to believe a stranger's words over the heart that beats only for you. Dawn broke cold and gray over the kingdom of Northaven. Lyra stood before the royal council, chains at her wrists, despite her condition of final indignity, orchestrated by Lord Darius, who watched with barely concealed satisfaction from his position at the king's right hand. Lyra of House King. Alaric's voice was formal, stripped of all emotion. You have been found guilty of high treason against the crown. The traditional punishment is death. Murmurs rippled through the gathered nobility. Elder Moira stepped forward. Your Majesty, regardless of the mother's crimes, the child she carries is of royal blood. A claim we cannot verify, Lord Darius countered smoothly. Nevertheless, the king continued, in recognition of past services to the crown, I commute your sentence to banishment. You will be taken beyond the frost borders. By nightfall, should you return to any lands under Nordhaven's rule, your life is forfeit. Lyra raised her chin, refusing to let them see her break. And my child, will you banish your own heir as well? A muscle twitched in Alaric's jaw. The child, if it is indeed mine, will be taken from you upon birth and raised in the royal nursery. No, the word tore from Lyra's throat before she could stop it. You cannot. I am king. I can do whatever I deem necessary to protect my realm. From an innocent child. From me? Lyra stepped forward, ignoring the guards who tensed at her movement. "Look me in the eyes, Alaric. You once said you could read the truth in them. For a heartbeat, their gazes locked. Something flickered in the depths of his eyes, doubt, perhaps even pain before he looked away. The sentence stands. Prepare her for the journey." As the guards moved to take her away, Lyra made one final appeal. "Someone close to you orchestrated this, Alaric, someone who stands to gain from our division. When you discover the truth, I hope the realization doesn't destroy you." Lord Darius signaled the guards. "Remove her. The king has more important matters to attend to than a traitor's desperate lies." As they led her from the chamber, Lyra caught Elder Moira's eye. The old woman's expression was unreadable, but she gave an almost imperceptible nod. Hours later, as twilight descended, Lyra found herself at the kingdom's northern border, facing the vast wilderness beyond. The guards had provided basic supplies, barely enough to survive a week. "This is where we leave you," the captain said, not unkindly. "The nearest settlement is 3 days' journey east. If you're wise, you'll seek shelter there." As they turned to leave, he hesitated, then whispered, "Not all believe the accusations, my lady. Be safe, for both your sakes." Then she was alone, one hand on her belly, facing an uncertain future in the gathering darkness. The wilderness beyond the frost borders was as unforgiving as its name suggested. 3 months had passed since Lyra's banishment, and winter had tightened its grip on the land. She had not made it to the eastern settlement the guard had mentioned. Instead, she had turned north, deeper into the unclaimed territories where Nordhaven's reach could not extend. The small cabin she now called home had been abandoned years ago, its previous occupant long gone. Lyra had spent weeks repairing the roof, sealing cracks in the walls, and gathering supplies for the winter ahead. Her body, now heavy with child, protested the labor, but necessity drove her forward. "Just a little longer," she whispered to her swollen belly as she stoked the fire. "We'll be warm soon." The child kicked in response, strong and insistent. Lyra smiled despite her circumstances. "You have your father's temperament, little one, impatient and demanding." The thought of Alaric brought the familiar ache to her chest. In quiet moments like these, she allowed herself to remember his laugh, his touch, the way his eyes softened when they were alone. Had any of it been real? Or had she merely been a convenient pawn in some larger game? A sudden gust rattled the shutters, pulling her from her thoughts. The storm was worsening. Lyra added another log to the fire and checked her supplies. The dried meat would last another week if she was careful. The roots and berries she'd gathered before the first snow would supplement her diet, though they were poor fare for a woman carrying a child. A sharp pain lanced through her abdomen, making her gasp. Not labor, not yet, but a warning that her time was approaching. She needed to be prepared. Lyra moved to the small table where she kept her medicinal orbs. Elder Moira had trained her well in the healing arts, a skill that had served her in the wilderness. She measured out IRBs for a strengthening tea, her mind drifting to the old woman who had been her only ally in the final days at court. Had Moira discovered anything about the forged letters? Was anyone searching for the truth? Or had Lyra been forgotten, her name erased from the court records as if she had never existed? Another pain, sharper this time. Lyra breathed through it, counting the seconds until it passed. "Not yet," she murmured. "We need more time." Outside, a wolf howled, the sound carrying through the frozen night. Others joined in, their voices rising. In eerie harmony, Lyra had grown accustomed to their presence. Sometimes she caught glimpses of them, through the trees, watching, waiting, but never approaching, like silent guardians. As darkness fell completely, Lyra lit a single candle to conserve her supplies. By its flickering light, she continued her preparations for the birth that would come soon. She was alone, far from help, but she would survive. She would protect her child. "We will endure," she promised the life within her. "Then someday we will return. Not for vengeance, but for truth." The wind howled in response, as if carrying her words across the frozen wasteland, back toward the kingdom that had cast her out. "The southern territories have accepted our terms, Your Majesty." Lord Darius's voice echoed in the cavernous throne room. "Princess Alara will arrive within the month for the wedding preparations." King Alaric stared out the towering windows, watching snow blanket the castle grounds. 6 months had passed since Lyra's banishment. 6 months of hollow victories and restless nights, and her dowry. He asked, his voice devoid of emotion. Access to their southern ports and a defensive alliance against the eastern tribes. Darius smiled thinly. "Everything we needed. Everything we needed." The words rang false in Alaric's mind. What he needed remained elusive, a phantom that haunted his dreams. "Your Majesty," Darius prompted. "Shall I confirm the arrangements?" Alaric turned. "From the window, do it. And have the royal apartments prepared for the princess." "Already underway. I've taken the liberty of removing all traces of previous occupants." The king's jaw tightened. "Leave me." When the door closed behind Darius, Alaric slumped onto his throne, suddenly exhausted. The crown felt heavier with each passing day. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Elder Moira entered, her ancient face more lined than he remembered. "Elder," he acknowledged. "What brings you here?" "The future of the kingdom, Your Majesty." She approached slowly, leaning on her staff. "This marriage alliance is necessary," he cut her off. "The council has decided." "The council," she repeated, her eyes sharp despite her years. "Or Lord Darius," Alaric frowned. "Speak plainly, Elder. Have you not wondered why Lord Darius was so eager to expose Lady Lyra's supposed treason? Why he pushed so forcefully for this southern alliance, immediately after careful Moira? Such questions border on insubordination," the old woman smiled sadly. "I have served 3 generations of your family, my king. My loyalty is to the crown and to the truth." She placed a small wooden box on the arm of his throne. "When you are ready to see clearly, open this. But do so in private, away from watchful eyes." Before he could question her further, she bowed and departed, leaving him alone with the mysterious box. Later that night, in his private chambers, curiosity overcame caution. Inside the box, he found a single sheet of parchment and a small vial of clear liquid. The note, in Moira's spidery handwriting, was brief, applied to the letters that condemned her. "Truth reveals itself to those who seek it." Alaric stared at the vial, conflict warring within him. To investigate would admit doubt in his judgment, in the council's verdict. Yet the alternative, ignoring the possibility of a grave injustice, was equally unthinkable. Dawn found him still awake, the vial untouched on his desk, his mind replaying Lyra's final words. "When you discover the truth, and you will remember that you chose to believe a stranger's words over the heart that beats only for you." Outside his window, the first light of day illuminated the distant northern mountains beyond, which lay the frost borders, and beyond that, the wilderness where he had sent her to face winter alone. The great cathedral of Nordhaven blazed with light. Hundreds of candles illuminated the ancient stone walls, their flames reflecting off golden ornaments and jeweled regalia. Nobility from all 7 kingdoms filled the pews, resplendent in their finest attire, while common folk crowded the outer courtyard. Eager for a glimpse of their king's bride, King Alaric stood at the altar, dressed in ceremonial armor that gleamed. In the candlelight, his face was a careful mask, betraying nothing of the turmoil within. Beside him, Lord Darius smiled with the satisfaction of a man seeing his plans come to fruition. The cathedral doors swung open. Princess Alara of the Southern Territories entered on her father's arm, her golden gown trailing behind her like liquid sunlight. She was beautiful, undeniably so, with her perfect features and practiced smile. A political match made in heaven, the council had said. A necessary alliance. As she approached, Alaric's hand moved unconsciously to his pocket, where Moira's vial now rested. 3 days ago, he had finally used it on the damning letters. The ink had changed color, revealing a different hand beneath the forgery, a hand he recognized all too well. The betrayal had come not from Lyra, but from within his inner circle. The princess reached the altar, her father placing her hand in Alaric's with ceremonial gravity. The high priest began the ancient words that would bind their kingdoms together. Today, before the gods and these witnesses, 2 souls and 2 realms shall become one. Alaric looked into Princess Alara's eyes and saw nothing but polite detachment. She would be a dutiful queen, perhaps even a good one. Their children would secure the alliance for generations to come. Children, his mind flashed to Lyra. Heavy with his child, facing the wilderness alone. His child, who would be born far from home, without protection, without birthright. If any hear no reason why these 2 should not be joined, the priest intoned, speak now or forever hold your peace. The cathedral fell silent. Lord Darius, standing nearby, gave an almost imperceptible nod of satisfaction. I cannot do this. The words escaped before Alaric could stop them. A collective gasp rippled through the assembly. Princess Alara's eyes widened. Your Majesty? Alaric stepped back, his decision crystallizing with sudden clarity. Forgive me, Princess. You deserve a husband whose heart is free to give. He turned to face the stunned gathering. This wedding will not take place today. Lord Darius moved forward, his face contorted with barely controlled rage. Your Majesty. You cannot. I can, and I will. Alaric's voice rang through the cathedral. Guards, arrest Lord Darius on charges of treason, forgery, and conspiracy against the crown. As the guards moved to obey, confusion erupted among the guests. The Southern King rose to his feet, demanding explanation. Princess Alara stood frozen, humiliation coloring her cheeks. Alaric addressed her directly. The fault is mine alone, Princess. Your reputation will remain untarnished, and Nordhaven will honor all agreements with your kingdom save this marriage. He turned to the assembled nobility. I have been deceived, and through my blindness, I have committed a grave injustice, one I intend to rectify immediately. With that, he strode down the aisle, ignoring the chaos erupting behind him. At the cathedral doors, Elder Moira waited, a knowing smile on her ancient face. Prepare a search party, he commanded. We ride for the frost borders at dawn. The pain came in waves now, each one stronger than the last. Lyra gripped the edges of her makeshift bed, breathing through clenched teeth as another contraction seized her body. Outside, a late spring storm lashed against the cabin walls, as if nature itself mirrored her struggle. Not long now, she whispered to herself. Gathering strength for what lay ahead, she had prepared as best she could clean linens, boiled water, medicinal herbs for pain and bleeding. But she was alone, with no midwife to guide her, no hands to hold, no voice to offer comfort. As the contraction eased, Lyra reached for the small knife beside her bed. If complications arose, difficult decisions might be necessary. The child must survive, even if she did not. The next pain came sooner, more intense. Lyra bit down on a folded cloth to keep from screaming. The wolves would be drawn to the sound of distress, and though they had kept their distance these past months, instinct might overcome caution. Between contractions, her mind drifted to Alaric. Would he ever know his child? Would he care? She imagined him in Nordhaven, perhaps already married to some political ally, building a new future while she fought to bring his firstborn into the world. "Your Majesty," she gasped bitterly as another wave of pain crashed through her. "See what your judgment has wrought?" Ours passed in a blur of agony and determination. The storm outside intensified, thunder shaking the small cabin's foundations. When the final moment came, Lyra summoned her remaining strength and pushed with everything she had. A cry pierced the night, strung, indignant, alive. "A son, Lyra," whispered in wonder as she lifted the squalling infant to her chest. "You have a son, Alaric." The boy had his father's strong features, even in miniature, the same proud brow, the same determined chin. But his eyes, when they briefly opened, were all Lyra's deep, violet, rare among the people of Nordhaven. "Prince of Nowhere," she murmured, cleaning him with trembling hands. But a prince nonetheless. As she wrapped him in the blanket she'd spent months preparing, a sound outside caught her attention. Not the storm, but something else. Voices. The crunch of boots in snow. Fear seized her heart. Bandits. Hunters. She had no strength to fight, no means to flee. The cabin door rattled. Lyra clutched her newborn tighter, reaching for the knife with her free hand. "Hello?" A woman's voice, aged but strong. "Is anyone within?" Lyra remained silent, heart pounding. "We mean no harm," the voice continued. "We seek a woman, Lady Lyra of Nordhaven." The knife trembled in Lyra's grip. How had they found her? Who had sent them? "Speak if you're there," the voice urged. "The storm worsens. We bring supplies, medicine. Who sends you?" Lyra finally called, her voice hoarse from hours of labor. A pause, then, "Elder Moira of the Royal Council, and another who wishes to make amends." Hope and suspicion warred within her. Could it be a trap, or could it possibly be? "Enter," she called at last. Slowly. The door creaked open. An elderly woman stepped inside, snow dusting. Her travel cloak. Behind her loomed a taller figure, still shadowed in the doorway. "Lady Lyra," the old woman said, relief evident in her voice. "I am healer, Tessa. Elder Moira sent us to find you." Her eyes fell to the bundle in Lyra's arms. The child, it's come. Lyra nodded, still wary. Just now, the figure in the doorway stepped forward into the light. Not Alarica, woman, tall and stern, wearing the uniform of the Royal Guard. Captain Freya of the King's Elite. She introduced herself with a bow. "We've been searching for weeks." "The King," she stopped, noticing Lyra's expression. "Perhaps the healer should attend you first. We bring news that can wait until you're stronger." As Tessa moved to examine mother and child, Lyra caught the captain's arm. "Tell me now." "What news?" Captain Freya's stern face softened slightly. "The King discovered the truth. Lord Darius has been arrested for treason. His Majesty rides north with a royal contingent, searching for you." Lyra's vision blurred with sudden tears. "Too late," she whispered, looking down at her son. "He's too late." "Perhaps not," Tessa said gently, unpacking her supplies. "A new life has just begun. It's never too late for truth to prevail." Outside, the storm howled on, but within the cabin, a fragile hope began to bloom alongside the tiny life cradled in Lyra's arms. Lord Darius paced his prison cell like a caged predator. 7 steps one way, 7 steps back. The dungeons of Northaven Castle were not built for comfort, but as a higher-ranking prisoner. He had been granted certain privileges, proper bed, adequate food, even books to pass the time. Not that any of it mattered. His plans, so carefully constructed over years, had collapsed in an instant. All because of a sentimental fool of a king and that meddling old woman. The sound of approaching footsteps made him pause. Guards rarely visited at this hour. The cell door opened to reveal Elder Moira, leaning on her staff, her ancient eyes studying him with something between pity and contempt. "Come to gloat, old woman." Darius sneered. "I come seeking understanding," she replied calmly. "Why, Darius? You were trusted, respected. The king considered you a friend." Darius laughed bitterly. "Friend? I was his servant, nothing more. 20 years I gave to this kingdom, shaping policy, forging alliances, strengthening our borders, and for what? To watch him hand everything to that foreign girl and her unborn brat? Ah," Moira nodded slowly, "you feared losing your influence. Once Lyra gave him an heir. She was nobody. A minor noble from the borderlands with no political value. The Southern Alliance would have made Northaven invincible." His fists clenched. "I did what was necessary for the kingdom." "No," Moira countered. "You did what was necessary for Darius. The kingdom was merely your excuse." He turned away, unwilling to face the truth in her words. "Your trial begins tomorrow," she continued. "The evidence is overwhelming. The forged letters, testimony from your co-conspirators, the poison found in your chambers. Poison," Darius whirled back. "What poison?" Moira's expression remained impassive. "The slow-acting toxin you've been administering to the king for months. Did you think no one would notice his declining health? The symptoms were subtle, but to a trained healer? That's a lie," Darius hissed. "I never save your denials for the tribunal." Moira cut him off, though I doubt they'll be more convincing there. Darius felt cold sweat break out on his forehead. Poison. Someone was framing him for a crime he hadn't committed. But who and why? "The king rides north to find Lyra," Moira continued. "When he returns with her and their child, your fate will be sealed." "If he returns," Darius muttered before he could stop himself. Moira's eyes narrowed. "What have you done?" Realization dawned on Darius's face. "Nothing. I've done nothing." He laughed suddenly, a sound devoid of humor. "But it seems I'm not the only one who believed the Southern Alliance was necessary." "Explain yourself," Moira demanded. Princess Alara's father was displeased by the broken engagement, humiliated, even. Such men don't forgive easily. "You're suggesting the Southern king would move against Alaric?" Darius shrugged. "I'm suggesting nothing. Merely observing that a king, traveling with a small contingent through disputed territories, makes an easy target." Moira studied him for a long moment. "You know something. Tell me. Why should I? My fate is sealed, as you said. Because whatever else you are, Darius, you've always claimed to serve Northaven first. Prove it now." The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken threats and possibilities. Finally, Darius sighed. There was talk among the Southern delegation. Before they departed, their captain met with someone in the lower town. Plans were exchanged. Who? Where? "I don't know details. I was already imprisoned." He stepped closer to the bars. "But I know they left by the western road, not the southern. Their true destination wasn't home." Moira turned to leave, moving with surprising speed for one so ancient. "Wait," Darius called after her. "If what I've told you prevents disaster, will you speak for me at the tribunal?" Moira paused at the door. If your information saves the king's life, I will ensure your death is quick and painless. That is all I can offer." As the door closed behind her, Darius resumed his pacing. 7 steps one way, 7 steps back. The game wasn't over yet. Not entirely. King Alaric approached the small cabin, heart pounding. After months of searching, he had found them. The morning sun filtered through the pines, casting dappled shadows across the path. Each step felt heavier than the last, weighted with regret and hope in equal measure. Inside, Lyra sat near the hearth, a small bundle in her arms. Her violet eyes met his, guarded but steady. She looked different than her, with new lines of hardship etched around her eyes, yet somehow stronger than he remembered. "Lyra," he breathed, her name a prayer on his lips. The sight of her stole his carefully prepared speech from his mind. "King Alaric," she responded neutrally. "You've come a long way." Her fingers tightened protectively around the bundle. "I would have traveled twice the distance." He remained by the door, afraid to approach uninvited. The cabin smelled of arbs and wood smoke, humble yet welcoming in a way his grand castle never was. "Lyra, I cannot begin to. Would you like to meet your son?" she interrupted, turning the blanket to reveal a sleeping infant, with a shock of dark hair against pale skin. The world seemed to stop. Alaric forgot to breathe. "His name is Edric," she said softly. "It means blessed ruler in the old tongue." A hint of pride crept into her voice, despite her reserve. Alaric knelt beside them, overwhelmed by the sight of his child. The floorboards creaked beneath his weight, rough against the knees that usually only bent in prayer. "He's perfect," he whispered, reaching out a trembling hand to touch the baby's cheek. At his touch, the infant's eyes fluttered open like his mother's, with flecks of amber like his father's. Recognition struck Alaric like lightning. This was his son, his blood, his future. A tear escaped before he could stop it, trailing down his bearded cheek. "I failed you both," he said, voice breaking. "I believed lies because the truth was too painful that someone close could betray me so completely." The confession felt like stones lifted from his chest, each word unburdening him. "And now?" Lyra asked quietly, her expression softening almost imperceptibly. "Now I know the truth. Darius is arrested." The forged letters revealed. He looked up at her, all pretense of royal dignity abandoned. "I come to beg forgiveness, though. I deserve none. I ask you to return not as my subject, but as my queen, as my heart." Edric stirred between them, tiny fingers grasping at air. Lyra adjusted his blanket with practiced care. Her movements gentle yet sure. Suddenly, shouts erupted. Outside Southern forces, attacking. Steel clashed against steel, men's voices raised in battle cries. As Alaric prepared to defend them, drawing his sword with a metallic ring, Edric cried out a sound, both frightened and commanding. Answering howls rose from the forest, eerie and primeval. Great gray shadows emerged from between the trees, surrounding the Southern soldiers with bared teeth and watchful eyes. "They've protected me all winter," Lyra explained, wonder in her voice, "as if they sensed we needed guardians." She stood beside Alaric at the window, their shoulders almost touching. The Southern forces retreated, harried by both wolves and royal guards. The morning light caught on armor and weapons, turning the clearing into a tableau of retreating shadows and triumphant defenders. Alaric turned to Lyra. Sheathing his sword, "Will you return with me? Will you give us a chance?" His voice was rough with emotion, his eyes never leaving hers. "Yes," she said finally, the single word carrying the weight of forgiveness. Not for the crown, but for him, for us, for the truth that prevailed despite everything. She reached out, her fingers brushing his scarred hand. Alaric embraced them. Gently, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling the warmth of their sun between them. I swear by sun and stars, you will never doubt my faith in you again. Outside, victory shouts rose, as the last enemies fled into the forest depths. The wolves melted back into the trees one by one, their mission complete. And within the small cabin that had witnessed both despair and miracle, a family broken by betrayal began helling together at last, 3 hearts beating as one,